Ultimately, that leads you to the realization that you have been pouring from an empty cup, trying to fill up everyone else's and put everyone else first, and you will burn out from that. Hey besties, hey friends, hey family, how's it going? I hope y'all are doing well. I hope you're having a restful January. I know it's been a lot so far, but I'm back. And this time I'm talking about boundaries and how I learned how to set boundaries. It has been a long journey for me when it comes to boundary setting. And I've definitely had constant issues saying no to friends, to family, even to coworkers. For a while, I thought it was some sort of valiant feat to not say no. And also to be able to juggle everything I was juggling and simultaneously keep everyone happy. But I quickly realized that I was keeping everyone happy at the expense of myself. And ultimately, that leads you to the realization that you have been pouring from an empty cup, trying to fill up everyone else's and put everyone else first, and you will burn out from that. So I just wanted to share some tips and kind of nuggets of my journey that allowed me to start setting boundaries and what that journey has looked like as a former people pleaser and person with like no boundaries whatsoever. So the first thing I think is really important, and if you're here, hopefully you're actively doing this, is admitting and accepting that you need to set boundaries. I think it's difficult sometimes to even realize because oftentimes other people aren't going to tell you unless they really care about you and know you super well. And even then, it's hard to know the line. I think that's what I struggled with a lot because I love to give to others. It not only is fulfilling for me, but I think that's what we're here for. But I started to realize quickly that I can give to others while also protecting myself. And I think that allowed me to really take a step back and say, okay, you need to set boundaries. Because if you don't, what are you left with? Going off of this, I think the second tip, boundaries are self-love and growth. And truly, there's nothing bad about them. The only reason why they're villainized is because they don't always necessarily benefit other people. But I think overall, you have to get to a point with yourself where you understand that it is an act of self-love and not an act of selfishness. And I think something that I used as a bit of a mantra to remind myself this and really kind of drill it into my brain was, I respect and love myself enough to look out for myself by setting boundaries. And that's what it is, right? I think it also is partially you looking out for yourself, you having your own back, because it can be easy, even people with the best intentions, and even your closest friends, family, etc., anyone, it can be easy to just give up boundaries when it comes to that because you love those people and it's understandable. And the thing about boundaries is it's for you again, right? And it's secondarily for others because if you set boundaries, you're happier, you feel more fulfilled with what you do say yes to, etc., etc. And also others know what your boundaries are, so they can then respect them. When you actually lay them out, it becomes a lot clearer to figure out who is in your life for what reason when you do set boundaries with them and you're able to see how they respond. Which brings me to the third point, which is practice saying no. You know, some people call it your sacred yes and your sacred no, and I understand why people say that because it is sacred. You deserve to say yes to things you actually want to do. You deserve to say no to things you don't want to do. And of course, sometimes we do things for other people, but at the same time, even then, I feel like you definitely need to remember that it's okay to say no, and it's also okay to say yes, and it's okay to not want to do something. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you're a bad person. you know? By doing that also, again, you realize who actually is in your life to honor you and your boundaries, and who is there possibly for other reasons, or maybe just don't understand. You deserve to have boundaries. Especially if you're a people pleaser, it can become difficult to justify to yourself that you need boundaries because you just want everyone to be happy. And I think that does fulfill you, but in a way you neglect yourself in that process. And then that can also lead to resentment and all of those things that didn't need to happen if you had asserted boundaries, or at least looked out for yourself in a different way and said yes or said no. There is a discomfort of saying no, though. And I think that's part of the process. Is sitting in the discomfort of saying no and also addressing the guilt that comes afterward. Because it can be really easy to say no and do it and be like, I'm asserting this boundary, yay, I'm proud of myself. And then immediately after, you still feel guilty for saying no, which is like, no, you shouldn't feel guilty for saying no after saying no. That is great and you're making progress. But at the same time, sometimes you just have to work through that guilt. I think especially as a people pleaser, when you start to correct some of those behaviors, you inevitably have the same emotions come up. It's very easy to revert back. It's important to stay strong in your boundaries and again, practice saying no, so that the more that you practice, hopefully the more that that shame or that guilt or that pressure goes away, or that stress that happens if you've been saying yes for a very long time. Sometimes someone really needs your help, or really it's someone really close to you also, and you just don't have it, and it's okay. And you have to say no, and it may be disappointing to them, it may be disappointing to you, but at the end of the day, honoring that for yourself hopefully gives you more peace and brings more solace, even if you have to work through feelings afterward that don't feel as great. After we sit in the discomfort, there is another part to work through, which is actually understanding what your capacity is. And arguably, maybe this would come before all of that, right? I think like when you say no, you understand I am at capacity. But I think sitting down with yourself and maybe journaling about it, or talking about it, or like bringing it up with your therapist or anything like that, and really talking through what your capacity looks like in different areas of your life, I think really does allow you to not gaslight yourself into saying yes when you have no capacity. Because if you know where your line is, it's easier to see when it's crossed, right? Sit down and really think, okay, what is my capacity when it comes to, my family time, my friend time, my time with my partner, the amount of time I can devote to other people's projects versus my own, the amount of time I want to devote to my job versus my creative hobbies. Like, you need to kind of figure out where those lines are. Again, sometimes it's hard to know that your cup is empty. Sometimes it's hard to know that you're burnt out. Sometimes you do slip up and you still say yes, and that's okay. But it's about learning for the next time. And so the more that you're able to gauge those capacities over time, even if it's through trial and error, better you'll be in the end. Of course, having people around that honors your boundaries helps, right? 100% is a way of being on the journey, because they will also help you when they know that you don't have capacity, or they know you said no in the past, or they know that that's a boundary of yours and they really care about you. Those people will help you along the way, and hopefully make your boundaries even stronger by not having to constantly be in conflict with people that are challenging them. So I definitely feel like surrounding yourself with people that support you on the journey will only make it easier, because it is challenging. The more you have people trying to take advantage of you and pushing those limits, the harder it is to push back, and the more work you have to do. And especially in the beginning, it's hard. It's hard to keep on the path. So definitely find people that you trust, that you feel safe with, that you can kind of practice boundaries with, that will also maybe help you to uphold them when you falter. Finally, this is a general note, but I think in setting boundaries, you have to learn to adapt. And this is a normal life thing. We all have to learn to adapt to change. Everything changes all the time. But I think giving yourself the space, giving yourself grace to actually know that this is how you feel right now, and maybe you won't feel like that in a month, and maybe you won't feel like that in a year, And maybe you haven't felt like that before, but that's okay. It's okay that this is where you're at right now. This is your capacity right now. And that will ebb and flow. And you can set new boundaries when you have new boundaries. You can tear down old boundaries that no longer serve you. But like giving yourself space to be fluid and knowing that things change and that you may be down and out and really burnt out for a period of time and you have no bandwidth and your boundaries are very tight and very astringent and you have to kind of shut everyone out. But then maybe you'll be on the other side of that in 6 months and you'll feel very giving and very free with boundaries and feel as though it's coming easy to you, etc. So it really just, you got to be able to adapt. That's part of it. And hopefully the people around you can also adapt, because as your boundaries flow and ebb, people will probably have to kind of interact with you in different ways as you go through different things. And I think also people that really love you and are close to you in your life can kind of feel some of that. When your energy's low, when you're burnt out, when they see that you're going through something, it's like, okay, you know, I understand that you might be a little closed off right now, or you might not want to do X, Y, and Z or overextend yourself. And I think that's part of like honoring friendship and honoring the people that you love as well. So we have reached the end. That is all. But I hope that you got some gems from this on learning how to set boundaries. I know it is an ever evolving process and things are never as easy as they seem, or it's easy to say things and not do them. It's easy to, you know, kind of give advice. But I think at the same time, I severely needed to set boundaries and I severely did not have any. And so I think I have come so far. And even though I still falter and I still overextend myself, because that's just the nature of who I am, I'm now able to say no and not feel so shitty. I'm now able to say no and know that that won't ruin my friendships or my relationships. And if it does, then that's not necessarily on me, you know, that could be on them, and not to internalize that. Sometimes you're also just not compatible with people, and that's okay. Sometimes your boundaries offend others, and that's fine. Y'all can move your separate ways, and that's okay. You will soon find out the sooner you start the journey. So I wish you so much luck on your journey of setting boundaries and killing off those people-pleasing behaviors. And let me know down in the comments if there's anything that you have learned through your journey that is helpful, or something that you maybe want to push back on, something that you don't agree with that I said, or an experience you've had setting boundaries and where you're at in your journey. I would love to hear. If there's any other videos, questions, comments, concerns you would like me to address in another video, in a new video, also leave that in the comments, because I would love to hear from y'all. Thank you, and I'll talk to y'all soon. Bye.